You know, I think I might be a bit enamored with this series.
Every so often, I get on Rock Band 3 and I like to make custom characters based on recent games, and yeah, you bet I did this for Danganronpa. I mean, yeah, Kyoko looks more like an old lady than I would like, but I'm happy to have made the attempt. I've even looked up parodies of this game, the likes of which I haven't done since Deus Ex Human Revolution, maybe?
At some point I was kind of tempted to wait on a review simply because I got a Monokuma shirt coming in, but after having played Ultra Despair Girls Danganronpa another episode...
I guess I should start by saying, spoilers, the very concept of this game and its character lineup means it's pretty much impossible to talk about this game without ruining at least a little of the first. And even though the game tries to dance around this, more on this later, spoilers are, by another ep's very nature, guaranteed. So you start off as Kamaru Naegi, sister to some guy from the first game, who has apparently been trapped in an apartment complex for a year and a half, but it is finally the day where she busts out onto the streets of Toa City, thanks to some familiar faces. But it's not long before she's captured by these children who are on a mission to kill every adult in the city. Setting her up for another killing game, she's soon paired up with someone from the first game, and so kicks off the game proper. The premise is miles simpler than its visual novel counterparts, but honestly, I'm okay with that. After 2 full games worth of exhaustive dialogue, a more straightforward plot is just fine. You got these 2 girls, supposedly comprised of ultimate despair, who are both kind of oddball in their own ways, and they have to learn to get along in order to survive. There is more of a mystery to it all, but none of it really compares to the diamond-encrusted ending of the second one. Another episode is definitely a lot more rote, and in some ways is clearly a setup for the actual gameplay, so I guess we should talk about that. Well, I'm not sure what there is to say. What you're watching is what comprises most of the combat. Really, in a post-Resident Evil 4, post-Dead Space, post-Gears of War, post-Max Payne, and even post-Deadly Premonition world, this rudimentary crap just doesn't cut it. On a base level, it's about as simple as you can get, just point and shoot. And while it's kind of smooth, the overall pace is very slow, and without much depth, this just makes it very boring. Certainly attempts are made to liven things up. As the game goes on, you unlock more types of truth bullet. Come on, we're not debating murder cases this time around. The only reason they were called truth bullets before was because they were metaphorical, but you're literally shooting a gun this time around. Just call it ammo, damn it. Anyway, you get different types of ammo and different Monokuma robots show up over the course of the game, but this soon dissolves into a rudimentary, utterly utilitarian rock-paper-scissors fest, which is only exacerbated by these stupid arcade challenges. Every so often you'll come across a room where you have to kill every enemy under a stipulation, usually all at once using one particular method, which means there's zero flexibility in how you approach these, and with only one right way to do these, they just show off how shallow the combat really is. Pointing and shooting gets you through most of the game, and what doesn't isn't really any fancier. What's worse is that these arcade challenges aren't completely foolproof. Even when I figured out the solution, the game would just say, "Oh, you didn't aim just right, so we'll take it away from you." I got so frustrated that I just turned it to Genocide Jack for the last few. All these do is affect your ranking at the end of each chapter, but like, if you're trying for the best rank, you can't instantly retry a puzzle without penalty, and no chapter is short enough that you can just memorize a perfect run. Not that you'd want to anyway, because all this amounts to a very tedious and repetitive battle system without the catharsis to cover this up. The exception is when you're playing as Jack, but you're kind of disincentivized to use her because the meter to use her with is also that which gives you a second chance after running out of health. I also find it puzzling she gets the dodge button when she can't take damage, and that there is a wealth of upgrade options for the invincible super kill everything mode. I guess making Monokuma's dance on a whim is fun, but I already have Ratchet and Clank for that. It pains me to say so many mean things, but not because I feel sorry for the game. I just don't want to be some whiny dick for the sake of sounding smarter than I really am. But frankly speaking, there isn't really a single aspect to the gameplay that's actively enthralling, and hence I shall stop caring. So how's the story? A huge problem is that while the genre of game may have changed entirely, the method for delivering the story is pretty much the same. Writing is still as expository as ever, and you'll still spend much time sitting and listening instead of playing the game. Kamaru and Toko might banter while you're shooting things, but most of the time you're still just watching and reading. Now let me re-clarify. And it's not a matter of, oh, I don't like reading. On the contrary, I'm a very fast reader. I'm getting off topic again. But when you show off as many modelling assets as this, it stands to reason you should use them correctly. But there are FMVs with the 3D engine. And anime sequences. and 2D animatics. Inconsistent cutscene style isn't one of my pet peeves on this channel. Yet. But it's really distracting to jump between talking and any untold number of pre-rendered art styles for reasons of clearly budgetary concerns. Being more on point, even as good as the first two games were, there were absolutely times that progress flagged because writing was so slow, but there was enough inner monologue and active participation of everyone in the scene to make it feel like something was happening, which isn't really true of Ultra Despair Girls. It's especially weird since, aside from the lack of first-person narration, there isn't really a departure in writing style, but it just goes to show how the standards of good writing can dramatically change in relation to the scale and speed of events. If the last two were MGS3, this is MGS4, with a really bloated and meandering one. Well, I guess we'll have to wait and see for sure, but to use an anecdote to make a point, when I was scanning the Two Best Friends channel, I saw the amount of videos they had for this game and simply asked myself, is this game really that long? The answer is yes. Yes indeedy. There's not a lot of meat on this game's bones in comparison to its forebearers, and though many of the story beats are as expository as ever, without that inner dialogue to build atmosphere, most of the dialogue is the dry humour the series has become known for. And yeah, I still giggled a few times, but without that counterbalance, you very quickly realise how light it is. It's references and banter, references and banter. You would expect more black comedy from Danganronpa, but here's the thing, Monokuma isn't in this game. Not really. You shoot a bunch of robots bearing his image, and they all sarcastically quip about how they've lost each time, but there is no one Monokuma that actively terrorizes the party and builds that sense of tension to leverage against you. Instead, you have these children who want to kill every adult in the city to create a paradise solely for kids. Why? Well, they all had abusive parents. I don't really consider this a spoiler, of which there are plenty in this game, so trite and telegraphed is this plot point. One of them was even sexually molested in their youth, but if you think this game is going to approach this subject with tact or self-respect, just let this sink in for a minute. I was around when there was this big hubbub about Chihiro's gender, but I guess we should count our blessings because things can always get worse. Yet another problem I have is the aforementioned confusion regarding this game's chronological standing. Komaru is by no means the only relative of one of the first game's characters you'll meet, but when you meet these other characters, the game never sees fit to actively name drop the relevant character from Trigger Happy Havoc, instead dropping, hey, remember this character's wacky personality? Asides. So if you never played the first game, you're not going to understand the purposes of these characters who die within 5 minutes of meeting them, and if you did, you're just going to get annoyed and ask why Toko isn't telling these people that she knows their relatives, including Komaru. There also might be some confusion in regards to this game's place in the Danganronpa space-time continuum. Playing the second game means there's a bit of a foregone conclusion for some of these characters, but they're so drastically different in manner between games that I wonder how much time the series actually spans so far, and it all seems to indicate that this is a spin-off game through and through. I think you can skip this without missing a ton of story, so conclusive is the ending when you already know the plot threads are resolved in future titles. There must be something nice I can say in this game's favour. Music's really nice. In all seriousness, cliched as it turned out to be, I enjoyed seeing the friendship between our two main characters blossom. It's nothing I haven't seen before, but seeing Komaru hug Toko and it finally being reciprocated did make me light up a little. I'm a sap at heart. Hey, did you know I actually cried at the end of the Disgaea anime, but not at the beginning of Up? I mean, this game isn't the worst I've ever played. Clock Tower 2 does not falter so easily. As I said, I don't want to be a grump for the sake of being a grump, but there aren't really many bright spots to this game, and what is good isn't necessarily interesting. After 2 games of visual novel, I'm happy for the attempt at something different in the Danganronpa universe, but that's not going to stop the end quote from being negative. It just barely avoided being the worst game on this show thus far. Still, it's not going to hamper my enthusiasm for Danganronpa 3.
Of course, now the question becomes, what should I play next? I don't know.